A hollow thud echoed through the first-class cabin of Flight 922 the instant Dylan Grice's open palm met the side of Marcus Langston's jaw. Shock rippled outward like a sonic boom. Passengers froze, phones already lifting in shaky hands. Marcus, tall, impeccably dressed, and unmistakably black, staggered against the bulkhead, tasting copper where his teeth cut his lip. "I don't care who you pretend to be," Dylan hissed, his voice a serrated whisper thick with rage. "On my aircraft, trash sits at the back." Gasps became a chorus. A silver-haired woman in 2D clasped her pearls. A teenage gamer in 3A mouthed, "No way," as his camera recorded. Marcus pressed 2 fingers to the swelling welt and locked eyes with his assailant. But before he could speak, an elderly man tried to intercede. Dylan wheeled on him with snarling authority. "Stay out of this. Someone has to teach people like him respect." What Dylan never imagined, could never have fathomed, was that he had just struck the owner of the very airline whose navy blazer he wore. Nor could he foresee that the black man he'd humiliated was the anonymous guardian angel keeping Dylan's chronically ill daughter alive. But to understand the cataclysm that would end careers, launch congressional inquiries, and redefine an industry, rewind to 2 hours earlier, 35,000 feet lower, beneath the gray morning sky of Seattle-Tacoma International. Marcus Langston, 41, broad-shouldered, freshly appointed CEO of Horizon Air, stepped from a charcoal town car into drizzle and jet exhaust. He nodded to his driver, then strode through sliding doors already fielding emails about quarterly losses, PR scandals, and today's closed-door meeting in Chicago. A vibration in his pocket flashed an encrypted text from his executive assistant, Heartwind, grant-funded. For $1,800 wired to Children's Heart Institute. Anonymous, as always. He smiled, just barely. Heartwind was the secret trust he'd founded to cover pediatric surgeries for employees' families, no questions asked. One such child, a 6-year-old named Ella Grice, was scheduled for another catheterization next month. Marcus paid the invoice before Ella's father even saw it. Across the terminal, inside a fluorescent crew lounge that smelled of burnt coffee and Lysol, Dylan adjusted his starched white shirt. 37, ex-Marine, groomed mustache sharp as broken glass. Bills stacked on his kitchen counter like Jenga towers. Ella's medication, a foreclosure notice, collections from 3 ambulance rides. An email from the airline's hardship fund had landed last night, denied. He'd cursed the diversity-obsessed, penny-pinching execs who he swore cared only about looking inclusive on Instagram. Grice, the crew chief barked, glancing over morning assignments. "You've got first-class service on 922 to Chicago. VP in seat 1A. Manifest just says priority executive. Be on your best behavior." Dylan's lip curled. First class meant tiny dogs and designer totes, and, lately, too many diversity hires flashing status they didn't earn. He pictured some overpaid black consultant sipping champagne while he scraped overtime for insulin vials and oncology copays. Boarding commenced under low clouds. Marcus entered with early access ease, settled into seat 1A, and flipped open a leather folio of route optimization graphs. He barely registered the other passengers, though a middle-aged woman 2 rows back whispered, "Isn't that the guy from Forbes?" Dylan emerged from the galley, scanning for infractions. His gaze snagged on Marcus's tailored indigo suit, rose-gold cuff links, and the faint glint of a Patek Philippe under a starched sleeve. The picture matched every bitter story Dylan told himself about how the world really worked. He approached, pasted on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Excuse me, sir, may I verify you're in the correct seat? First-class fares run north of $3,000. Marcus offered the boarding stub. Dylan took it between thumb and forefinger like a used tissue. "And your ticket was purchased? How exactly?" "Corporate travel department," Marcus answered evenly. "Corporate," Dylan echoed, as though tasting something sour. "Mind if I double-check the manifest for irregularities?" He turned, broadcasting into his lapel mic loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "Cabin crew, I have a potential seating discrepancy in 1A." A gray-bearded investor in 1B frowned. A teenage girl whispered to her mother, "Is he profiling?" Minutes later Dylan returned, eyes narrowed. Sometimes people confuse first class with premium economy. Happens when they overestimate their status. "No confusion here," Marcus said, scrolling through an operational safety report. Phones tilted. Tension thickened like cabin pressure. Dylan leaned forward, voice dropping to a poisonous hush. "Tell me, pal, what do you actually do for a living?" Marcus lifted his eyes. "Strategic leadership in the aviation sector." The phrase landed like a gauntlet. Dylan scoffed. Leadership. Right. Look, let's not pretend. Sometimes quotas put folks where they're not qualified. I'm sure you're wonderful at whatever community outreach gig you came from. But this cabin has standards. Marcus's jaw flexed. He'd faced Wall Street sharks, foreign ministers, and union negotiations that devolved into shouting, but nothing quite stabbed like the casual certainty on Dylan's face. I'd like to make a private phone call, Marcus said, reaching for his iPhone. Dylan's hand shot out, seizing Marcus's wrist. Phone's down during boarding. Release me, Marcus replied, quietly lethal. I'll release you, Dylan growled, when you respect real authority. The bearded investor stood. This is unnecessary, flight attendant. Sit, Dylan barked, turning his fury outward. Sir, this passenger is being combative. Marcus inhaled, counting back from 5 the way his mentor taught him. He reminded himself of boardrooms, of being the only black face at the mahogany table, of his father's warning. Never let anger write your story, he exhaled. If there's an issue, he said, let me speak with your supervisor. No, Dylan snapped, tone cracking like ice. We've indulged you enough. He grabbed Marcus's phone outright. Let's see what kind of fantasy emails you've got. Board meetings, CEO alerts. A notification flashed, urgent. Horizon exec session, moved up. CEO attendance mandatory. Dylan laughed. CEO? Cute. At the galley threshold, 26-year-old flight attendant Javier Morales watched in horror, clutching a tablet that displayed Marcus Langston's corporate profile, gleaned after a quick employee directory search. He tried to wave Dylan over, but Dylan ignored him, adrenaline high on prejudice. This ends now, Dylan declared, stepping closer. Either apologize for the disturbance and move to coach, or find another flight. Marcus rose slowly, 6'3" frame unfolding like a drawn sword. He fixed Dylan with a gaze that had silenced billion-dollar auditors. Mr. Grice, he said, having read the stitched name badge, you have just made a career-defining error. Big words, Dylan sneered. Marcus reached into his breast pocket and produced a titanium business card. He offered it. Dylan snatched it triumphantly, then whitened as he read. Marcus A. Langston, Chief Executive Officer, Horizon Air Group. Javier hurried forward, tablet aloft. Sir, he's our CEO, he blurted to the cabin. Gasps turned to murmurs. Smartphones recorded Dylan's color draining from his face. Marcus reclaimed his phone from Dylan's limp grip. Call security, he told Javier. This gentleman is relieved of duty. Dylan sputtered. Sir, Mr. Langston, I didn't know. That's the point, Marcus replied. You chose not to know. The captain appeared, shock etched in every line. Marcus addressed him coldly. Captain, please arrange for a replacement attendant and coordinate with ground security. We will depart when the cabin is safe. As Dylan's knees threatened to buckle, Marcus added, almost as an afterthought, and someone fetch ice. My jaw aches. Security escorted Dylan down the jet bridge while passengers filmed. But the universe wasn't finished with twists. Marcus gathered his belongings, preparing to brief the crew, when a small voice chirped from row 3, Daddy. Cameras pivoted. Dylan's wife, Claire, stood at the curtain with their daughter Ella, pale, fragile, IV port hidden under a cardigan. They had accepted crew family standby seats. Ella's heart condition left her breathless after short walks. Marcus's chest tightened. He had seen every surgical invoice, every heartbreaking specialist note. He knelt, addressing Ella with gentle warmth. You feeling okay for takeoff, champ? She nodded shyly. He pressed a lollipop into her hand. One he always carried for nervous children. Dylan, in security's grasp, wheeled around. Recognition struck like lightning. You're the sponsor? He croaked. Marcus inclined his head. Heartwind writes checks. I write Heartwind. Dylan's face crumpled. Don't cancel it. Please. Marcus's gaze hardened, memory tugging back to nights his own single-mother pawned jewelry to pay rent while neighbors spat slurs at her boy who dreamed of flight. Actions have consequences, he said. For you, for me, for everyone in this metal tube. The flight to Chicago finally lifted into broken clouds, the cockpit tense but compliant. Marcus wrote incident reports, assured passengers, and checked in on Ella, who colored quietly beside her mother. Dylan spent the next 6 hours in an airport holding room, replaying the slap, the card, the crushed look on his daughter's face when security steered her father away. News of the altercation leaked before wheels touched down. By the time Horizon's board gathered in a glass-walled conference room overlooking Lake Michigan, CNN chironed flight attendant assaults airline CEO, potential hate crime investigation. Internal audits unearthed 39 prior complaints against Dylan, all buried by sympathetic managers. The FAA opened a civil rights probe. Stock dipped 8% in a day. Marcus addressed cameras that evening with poised fury. No passenger, employee, or human being will be demeaned for the color of their skin on my watch, he declared, voice echoing against marble columns. We are rebuilding from the rivets up. He announced immediate termination of Dylan Grice, paid trauma counseling for affected passengers, and mandatory anti-bias retraining for all 18,000 staff, starting with senior leadership. Journalists pressed him on Heartwind. He sidestepped, refusing to name beneficiaries, but social media sleuths pieced together that the Grice family's medical bills had been covered by the man Dylan struck. Outrage turned viral. Congress subpoenaed Horizon records. Marcus testified on Capitol Hill, his stitched lip visible, explaining how unchecked prejudice endangers both dignity and safety at 38,000 feet. Hashtag slap of justice and hashtag fly with respect trended for weeks. 8 months later, in a mahogany-trimmed courtroom overlooking Chicago River, Judge Leah Bradford pronounced sentence. Dylan Grice, found guilty of battery, civil rights infringement, and abuse of duty, received 18 months in federal prison, $60,000 restitution to civil rights nonprofits, and a lifetime ban from aviation employment. Gasps fluttered like paper wings when the judge added a condition: 900 hours of community service teaching conflict resolution to at-risk youth. Dylan's plea for leniency, anchored in his daughter's illness, crashed against a wave of passenger victim statements. Still, Marcus petitioned the court privately to allow Dylan monitored visitation with Ella, arguing that no child should pay double for a parent's sins. 2 years passed. Horizon Air's customer satisfaction scores leapt to industry highs. Discrimination complaints plummeted by 72%. Competitors adopted Horizon's bias intervention protocols, fearing shareholder revolt. At the annual aviation summit in Dubai, Marcus unveiled data showing profits up 39% since instituting radical dignity measures. Investors applauded the link between inclusivity and revenue. In a modest suburban kitchen outside Tacoma, Claire spooned applesauce laced with meds into Ella's mouth and scrolled through pictures of Marcus receiving the NAACP Vanguard Award. She didn't know whether to feel gratitude or guilt. Heartwind funds still covered Ella's treatments. Marcus had reinstated them quietly, on one irrevocable condition. Claire must complete a year-long diversity education program and document Ella's exposure to cultures beyond their immediate circle. Claire agreed without hesitation. Dylan, released on parole, stacked produce at a grocery warehouse by night and tutored teens by day, fulfilling his court-mandated hours. Sometimes, between pallets and forklifts, he rehearsed apologies he could never unsay. He still wore the faint scar of his own hand across his knuckles, a reminder that hatred is a boomerang. One overcast May morning, Horizon Flight 922 taxied to the same Chicago gate, where everything shattered. Marcus disembarked last, thanking each attendant by name. In the terminal, he spotted Claire and Ella waiting to board the connecting leg to Cleveland for a new trial therapy. Ella beamed and sprinted, heart monitors blinking under her sweatshirt, as Marcus knelt to catch her. Claire offered a tentative smile. She's stronger, she said. Your scholarship, the foundation, kept her alive. Marcus rose, meeting Claire's eyes. Use the gift well, and teach her what respect looks like. Claire nodded, tears glittering. We are. Every day. As they hugged, CNN's airport feed flickered above, Horizon CEO champions Global Equity Index. A traveler nearby whispered, that man changed flying forever. Marcus inhaled jet fuel, coffee, and the faint sweetness of redemption. He remembered Dylan's slap, the sensation of skin against skin, the sting and humiliation. Yet here stood Dylan's daughter, heart beating stronger because generosity outlived vengeance. Perhaps that, Marcus thought, was the real authority Dylan had never understood, not the power to put someone in their place, but the power to lift them beyond it.